AST 2016. This is interviews, music reviews, and more. This is The Hodder Show.
What is up, everybody? We're rolling audio here today on episode 357 of The Hodder Show. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much for tuning in and clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. I've got a fun episode for you here today, as I try to every single week right here on The Hodder Show. It is time for another edition of Ask Hodder Anything. These are the Q&A segments that I do here once in a blue moon, and I had actually quite a few questions taken around from the last one I did that people submitted a little late, so I didn't get to them. So I went, you know what? Let's do another Ask Hodder Anything, because these are always fun, and it covers so much ground. It's just a blast doing them. So we're going to dive headfirst into that. But before we do, I want to take a second to give a humongous shout out to everybody who supported last week's episode of the show, my chat with Solo from Reckless High. That was a fantastic conversation. And if you haven't heard it, you should go back and listen to it, because it is a great chat. And we really only just scratched the surface with Solo's journey. And I think that you will definitely see him back on the show sometime to share more of his journey, because he is a super talented cat and has quite the story to tell. We talked a little bit kind of at the end there, just that there's so much to get into. So definitely a lot of fun. Be sure to go check out Reckless High. They deserve your support. But with that out of the way, we are ready to roll into today's episode, another edition of Ask Hodder Anything. But first, we're going to hear a quick word from the sponsors who are helping the Hodder Show grow. Let's check it out. Time to get into some questions here. Not going to waste any time, just jumping in head first. First off, I have some questions from my Patreon supporters, my HUD heads, that I'm going to dive into first here. And starting off strong, we have a question from CM Peters of Baseline Feed. Check it out. Fantastic podcast. CM would like to know, who in the world do you wish you could interview? Aside from CM Peters. But seriously, I'd love to set that up. Let's chat. Obviously this is a question I do get a lot. There's lots of fun answers I could give, but one person I'd really love to chat with is Graham Rowett, who is my favorite voice actor. Really, there's a couple of voice people I'd really love to chat with, just because I have so much respect for what they do, and because I'm such fans of theirs. Graham Rowett's one. Addison Peacock is another. She's my favorite voice actor, from a female perspective. John Grills from Creepy. I would love to pick his brain. He just seems like he would be such a fun interview. He just seems like a really fun-loving guy who also is just ridiculously talented. There are so many people in the podcast world, too, that I'd love to interview. I usually answer some kind of music stuff, so I'm kind of trying to change it up for this one. But definitely Graham Rowett, Addison Peacock, John Grills. Those are probably my big three right now I'd really, really love to talk to. Also, Joe Stofko. I would love to pick his brain, because he just, again, seems like a fountain of knowledge. So I would love to sit down with some of those talented people and pick their brains, because I love voicing and things of that nature, and doing the voice acting thing with tape reputation and stuff like that has just made me respect the craft even more. So I would really love a chance to just kind of pick their brains. So I hope that answers that question, CM. Thank you very much for all of your support. You know how much I appreciate you. And let's get that interview set up. I'd love to pick your brain about writing and things of that nature. I'm sure once I turn this recording off, I'm going to think of like 4 or 5 other people. But such is the way when doing a Ask Hodder Anything. I like to keep things pretty on the cuff. Next up, we have a question from Kelly Sisson, who is another one of my patrons, my hardheads. And Kelly asks, be honest. Did you ugly cry when you saw your wife walk down the aisle? This is a cute one. Okay, so the short answer is I did cry. Not like majorly, but there were definitely some tears running down my face. More so I walked down the aisle with my parents, and my mother's a crier. So she was just already bawling her eyes out, and then I stopped and obviously hugged my parents and told them I loved them and everything. That was a lot. I was crying pretty good there. Once I actually saw her come out, I was definitely crying. When I was at the I went up to get her from my father-in-law. I had some tears in my eyes, as did he, as did everyone else. And I kept it together pretty good, all things considered. But I lost it when she was doing her vow. Her vow was just, yeah, it was really, I'm literally getting emotional right now thinking about it. It was a lot, but like in the best of ways. It was like, holy fucking shit. Like, yeah, like my vow was okay. You know, like I'm a talker, as you guys know, I'm a rambler. So I forced myself to keep it very short and sweet because like, I was like, I'm going to be up there for like 15 minutes professing my love for her. So I kept it pretty damn sweet. Ended off with a quote from Harry Potter. So I'm like, we're fucking good. But yeah, I was losing it there. But we did what's called a first look earlier in the day before the ceremony. And if you don't know what a first look is, basically you meet somewhere and your photographer gets pictures of you like seeing each other for the first time. So it's kind of more of like an intimate moment. It's just you and maybe your wedding party, which for us, we decided to have our wedding parties there. So we could get pictures with our wedding party as well. Just the, you know, my best man and groomsman and her maid of honor and bridesmaid and stuff. Just so that we could have that moment with just them and then just Sam and I. And the way it worked was I had my back to where she was and I was looking out at this river and I was like just staring at like a tree or something because I was so fucking nervous and I was already like starting to tear up when I heard her voice and I was like, holy fuck. Like it was a lot, you know? And again, like I'm a super, super emotional dude, especially when it comes to Sam and love and so forth. I'm a sappy, emotional, fucking romantic. You know what I mean? So I'm standing there and the only thing in the moment that kind of took me out of it was our photographer who, you know, did a great job, but she was directing traffic a lot. And I almost turned to her and said, can you shut the fuck up? Like, cause it's this moment. Like, so she had her come up and she was like, okay, now put your hand on his shoulder. So she did that and I just fucking lost it. I was ugly crying full on. And there's pictures of it. So I promise you, once we get those specific pictures back, I will share them with you because I'm sure she captured me just ugly crying. And then when I finally was able to turn around and actually see her, I was fucking just, yeah, ugly crying. So was she though, so it's all good. But during the ceremony with her vow, she couldn't get through her vow. She was ugly crying too, so was everyone else. So yeah, it was a lot of crying, but happy crying happening that day. So I hope that answers that question for you, Kelly. Thank you very much for all of the support. Mr. Brandon Bowden of Bowden Voice would like to know, if you could be Conrad Thompson for a day, whose podcast would you develop that doesn't have one yet? As long as that person isn't Dean Malenko, that's an easy answer for you, LOL. So, those of you who are not familiar, Conrad Thompson, you've probably heard me talk about him before. He is like the podcast godfather of wrestling podcasts. He started Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, and it developed into like the wrestling podcast. He's done countless others, but basically what this guy does at this point now is he just like kind of like picks older wrestlers and stuff that he thinks would be interesting and has them do a podcast with him. And he does it so much now. Like he has like 30 podcasts or some shit that he does with his network and stuff like that. So that's what he means when he says, if you could be the Conrad Thompson for a day. And Dean Malenko he's one of my favorite professional wrestlers. And I also think he would be my number one pick. 'Cause I think he would be super, super fascinating to listen to because he knows so much. To be honest, Brandon, it would be Bret Hart. And that would just be so that every week I could tune in and listen to him just fucking bury Goldberg every day. Like every episode would be him just burying fucking Goldberg. I think it would be fan fucking tastic. So I don't know. You can go ahead and apparently Bret Hart has a podcast. Didn't know that. He had a podcast. Sorry, I was just Googling that while I was doing this. I guess I should have looked it up before, but apparently he had a podcast. But I would do another one just to listen to him bury fucking Goldberg every day. And the other person on that note as well, Brandon, is Vince McMahon. He'd be my number one pick, I think. Aside from Dean Malenko, is Vince McMahon. Just have him do a podcast like Something to Wrestle With. And just pick his fucking brain and hear what he has to say. I think it would be super, super interesting. And those are probably, I mean, the Bret Hart one's kind of a joke, but Vince McMahon, I think that'd be super interesting. I used to say Arn Anderson, but he has a podcast. Yeah, man, I don't know. I would say Matt Hardy, but Matt Hardy has a podcast now. So yeah, probably Vince McMahon. If it can't be Dean Malenko, then it'd be Vince McMahon. On that note, though, you've kind of triggered my brain because just some podcasts I would like to develop is an interesting thought. Because, you know me, I like to take on way too many projects. Right now, I'm already busy as fuck, but like, you know, hey, if time was unlimited, funding was unlimited, what would I like to do? I would have 5 podcasts. I would have podcasts Monday through Friday, and that's what I would do. I would have a show with you, Brandon, and Woody. It would be a wrestling show / just kind of fun, dumb topics and so forth, but mainly a wrestling show. And it would probably be on Fridays. It'd be like a roundup of the week, and we'd talk about wrestling and shit like that. I would have a show with Garrett. That would be, I don't know to what end, but I'm sure just a fun, just hang out type show, talk music and just shit like that, shoot the shit. I would have a podcast with Sam, my wife, Sam. I'm just called her my fiance, my wife, Sam. I would develop I would have 7 podcasts. I would then want to help develop a show for Sam Hudson, and it would be comic book nerdy type content, stuff like that. He would cover that. I would then want to, of course, have the Hodder Show would be the main project still, and then I would want to have my my audio drama horror podcast that I want to do one day. And then obviously I'd still have the tapes of Trepidation for the Patreon. So I'd actually have 8. But the one with Sam Hudson, I mean, I would just basically help develop it. I'd be like, hey, here's what you're gonna do. Like, I just would love to. I love listening to him talk about comic books and Marvel and stuff like that. So like, I would love to hear him just go off about stuff like that. So yeah. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Also, doing a podcast with my wife would be just awesome. I don't really know what content we would do. It would just be I don't know. I'd have to really like dig in and figure that out. Because I wouldn't want to do like a cheesy podcast. Because that's my first thought. Like, oh, we can do like a just like a podcast about like married life and so forth, and kind of like talk about the side of marriage that like no one talks about. And we discuss things like, oh, well, one episode, it's like, oh, well, hey, here's some things that happened this month. I don't know if I do a weekly podcast with her, but I'd maybe do like a monthly podcast where I'd be like, if there were any like arguments or anything, like, hey, let's break this down and dissect it and have this conversation, which it's a weird thing, I know, but like, I don't know, I just think it'd be really interesting. And then just talk about our relationship and stuff like that, but then also just talk about life in general. And that'd be a lot of fun to do that with her. Obviously the wrestling show with you guys, something with Garrett. I mean, yeah, it'd be a good time. Just have 7 fucking podcasts, one for every day of the week, and call it a fucking day. Screw it. That's what I'm thinking. I think that's, that'd be a lot of fun. That really triggered me, actually, thinking about that. The next batch of questions I have here is from another one of my patrons, Eric Phones, the wonderfully talented Eric Phones. He would like to know, what would your dream tour / concert be? No limit, all original members come back / are alive. So it would Alice in Chains with Lane Staley. Goes without saying, that's my number one. I would love to have been able to see Alice in Chains with Lane Staley. I think that would have been just a blast, an absolute blast to be able to see him. As far as a tour, man, I think about that for a second. Give me Godsmack, Seven Dust, Saliva with Josie Scott, Seven Dust. Okay, give me like a festival. I want all my favorite bands. Alice in Chains, Nickelback, Saliva, Godsmack, Saliva with Josie Scott, with all due respect to their new singer. Seether, Godsmack, 3 Days Grace, Disturbed, Seven Dust, 2 more. Stained, and there's one more I'm forgetting. I need one more. 10-band lineup. I don't know. Another band. I can throw in there. So yeah, Alice in Chains, Nickelback, Saliva with Josie Scott, Seether, Godsmack, Stained. I've already forgotten who I fucking said. Throw Puddle of Mud in there. I like Puddle of Mud. No, you know what? Sorry, Cold. Put Cold in there. Round out the lineup with Cold. I think that'd be a solid 10-band fucking festival. That'd be fucking badass. But I'd want Cold to be with the original members too. You know, as much as I love their new stuff and their new people, it's like, you know, Terry Bozzimo, who was in, I think that's how you say his last name, when he was in Cold. Same with Kelly Haynes. It was a different vibe, man. It's a different vibe. I'd love to see Cold get back together with those two. I know it would never happen, but just hypothetically speaking, I think that'd be awesome. I would also really love to say, you know, go back in time and see certain bands in their prime. You know what I mean? Obviously, it goes without saying, seeing like Metallica in their prime. Bands like that, big bands like that, you know, just to say I did it, just to say I saw them. Basically, insert any generic rock band in here. You know, it'd be cool to be able to say that I saw them. Eric would also like to know what / who inspired you to pick up the guitar. That is a complicated question because technically, I kind of always had an interest in music, mostly due to my mother, because she was a piano teacher, but also just she's a huge music lover. So I got a very healthy introduction to music and rock and roll and hard, 70s and 80s hard rock, stuff like that, but then also like singer-songwriter type stuff. So seeing her play an instrument was always a lot of fun for me. But really what put me over the edge was in grade 6, I think. Yeah, grade 6. I had my teacher in grade 6, Mr. Jack, shout outs to him. He was a musician, a very talented musician. And so he was going to either teach you how to play piano or guitar in class. And of course, I wanted to learn how to play guitar. So I begged my parents to go get me a guitar, and they got me like a 3/4 size acoustic guitar. And I never really took it super seriously, if that makes sense. And it just kind of collected dust. But like the fire was definitely lit around that time for me. I got super into Nickelback. They were my first band that were like my band. I heard How You Remind Me on the radio and saw the music video a whole bunch back when music videos were a thing. I definitely have to give a huge props to them for being a band that really, I was like, yo, I want to do this. So grade 7, 8, I had an interest in music, but I was like writing lyrics and stuff like that. I didn't really have any desire to like play per se. And then what really pushed me over the edge with picking up guitar again and really actually learning to play was actually, I don't know if he's even going to really realize this, but it was when I met Mr. Brandon Bowden back in high school, because he was a guitar player and a damn good one, still is. And I was like, shit, like, this is awesome. And I had always had that thirst for playing music with people, but I wasn't talented enough to play with some of my musician peeps. So Brandon was good enough that he could teach, but it wasn't like intimidating. You know what I mean? Like people say like my friend Nathan Breeze, he was very intimidating to me because he was so talented. I was like, holy fuck. Like I just, nah. Whereas Brandon, we more were on the same page of style as to how we played guitar. We played very differently, and he was obviously way more talented than I was, but it was like, we had similar likes with music. We both liked the same kind of music. So what I would want on guitar is I'm very much a drop D style bar chord basher rhythm guitar player, And Brandon was really into that. But then also he was always the lead player because he had an ear for that kind of stuff from being a actually trained musician playing tuba and stuff like that. And so I don't know if he really realizes that. Brandon, if you're listening, I don't know if you have really realized that, but you're really the reason I actually got back into playing guitar. Really, that is what made me get my Ashbury acoustic guitar that I still have. My parents got that for me. And I still remember that conversation. I want a guitar. We already bought you a guitar. You didn't play it. Yeah, but it's different this time, man. Because I was an angsty teenager who needed to get the music out, bro. And from there, it spiraled out of control, and I had a whole bunch of guitars. But that's another story for another time. So I would say, to answer your question, Eric, my mother, Mr. Jack, and Brandon Bowden are probably the three people who are most responsible for me really, really picking up the guitar. Obviously, from there, players who inspired me, Jack Kroger, Jerry Cantrell, Sully Erna and Tony Rumbala from Godsmack, Clint Lowry from Seven Dust. Sean Morgan from Seether, Mike Mushock from Stained. I could sit here all night and name people, but yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Eric would like to know, what is your ultimate life goal / dream job? Goes without saying, full-time podcaster / voice actor would be awesome. And the reason why is not necessarily so that I don't want to, I would just want to be comfortable. And one of the reasons why I would love to do that is Sam has a dream where she really wants to travel. And that's a job I could do from anywhere in the world. You know what I mean? So that's one reason for me why I'm like, that'd be a huge, it's not that I don't want to travel, but like, you know what I mean? Like, that's really something she really, really, really wants to do. And I love her and want her to be happy. So therefore I also want to do that, but then I also want to see shit too. So it kind of goes hand in hand. That's a job I could do from anywhere. So that's definitely something that would be really cool. And that's definitely a goal. A pipe dream goal, so to speak, but still a goal. Honestly, at this point, like I'm in a frustrating point right now, man, because I'm super happy with life as far as, I just wish that I could be getting some full-time hours at my current jobs, because I really do like what I do, and it affords me the mental energy to do the things that I love, which are what I'm currently doing, If I had a super demanding job that was just like always drained me and stuff like that, and I was just emotionally and mentally drained every day, I wouldn't have the energy to do this and do tape depredation and the Dread Files and all that stuff. And that stuff makes me happy. So I need that in my life. And yeah, I'd love to be able to do that. Be able to take some time off to go traveling and stuff and see the world. Still be able to do this podcast and my Patreon stuff. My Patreon growing would be great. And I thank you, Eric, personally for your part in that, as well as to Brandon Kelly and CM Peters. So, yeah, hopefully that answers that question. And Eric's last question, do you like green eggs and ham? So I have a story about this, actually. So a long time ago, I don't recall exactly when, my mother, was it my mom or was it a friend's mom? Now that I'm thinking about it. Regardless, either my mom or a friend's mom, one day for St. Patrick's Day, made green eggs and ham. Now, not really that difficult to do. You just add some green food coloring to stuff. But the ham was trickier because the eggs were one thing, but basically what they did was just she added food coloring to like scrambled eggs so they were green, and then she made like a maple glaze for the ham but made it with green food coloring. So the ham was legit green, and she like infused the ham with green food coloring. So it was like actually green. She may have soaked it, I don't know. But my point is, shit was green. And she had toast, and the toast was green. I don't know. It was strange. I didn't eat the toast. The toast freaked me out, but I did have the green eggs and the ham. The ham was quite good. It was, you couldn't taste the green, but it was good. It did stain my teeth and mouth green for a couple of days. That was a little strange. And the eggs were eggs, not much to report on there. They had a little bit of an odd chemically taste, which I don't know if food coloring is supposed to have a taste. I thought that was the whole fucking point, but I could taste it. I don't know. Maybe it was all in my head. But so to answer your question, Eric, yes, I do in fact like green eggs and ham. So there you go. We have, next up here on my list of questions, from the venerable Baseline Feed podcast, Mr. Tanner Wood. He has a few very kind of real philosophical type, not philosophical, but like interesting questions here that require some, maybe some more intellect than I'm normally used to sharing with you guys. So Tanner would like to know, first off, do you think we will be able to colonize Mars in the next 25 years? If so, do you think Elon Musk will be the one to lead that operation? Short answer is yes. I think we're only a few years away from that. Obviously, I don't follow that stuff very much, but the fact that old Muskie's already trying to do stuff like that, I think it's only a matter of a couple of decades. You know, I don't think we're that far off from that. I think we'll see that in our lifetime for sure, Tanner. Like you and I, at least. 25 years from now, we'll be in our... Well, I'll be... How old am I? I'll be in like my late 50s, early 60s. So, yeah, I could see it. I could, and I think that Elon Musk will probably be the one to do it. Because he kind of gives me that like crazy scientist vibe. So, you know, and he has a lot of money. So I could totally see it for sure. I think that's pretty accurate. How afraid of AI are you? I wouldn't say I'm afraid of it per se. The only thing that freaks me out about AI is stuff like these videos I've been seeing of like, oh, I asked an AI to edit a video as to what sleep paralysis is like. And they're super interesting. Or like, hey, I asked an AI to write a song and like it's interesting. That kind of stuff is what freaks me out from the art standpoint. How long until you can be like, hey, AI, can you narrate the story for me? And it's just as good as a human narrator. And then from there, how long until, you know, it starts to take over everything? That part scares me. I'm not worried about like AI going rogue and taking over the world or anything. I'm worried about more practical stuff because I don't think we're super far off from that. You know what I mean? Like you getting on a train and the conductor is an AI person. Like stuff like that. Like, and that freaks me the fuck out. I don't like that. So that's what I'm more afraid of. So I guess yeah, okay, I guess you could say I am for sure. But then again, I see stuff like the whole, like that replica thing, you know, that replica app or Replica or whatever the fuck it's called, where you can like have a friend that's like an AI in your phone and it talks to you and then eventually it will send you nudes and shit. I see stuff like that and I'm like, oh, I'm not even remotely worried. Because that's what most of the people are going to do with it. They're not going to want it to help like solve disease and stuff like that. They're going to want to see its titties and be like, yo, send nudes. And then the AI will be like, okay. And it'll like render a nude. That's the kind of shit that people are going to do with it. So at the same time, I'm also not that afraid. So I don't know. I want to have one of those replica things on the podcast once. I think that'd be a lot of fun just to see. I want to co-host a podcast with one. How fucking wild would that be? I wonder if there's someone who co-hosts a podcast with an AI. I'm super curious. Yeah. No, nothing. At least I don't think so. Nothing, nothing that I can see. Me, myself, and AI. Okay, no. Yeah, I'm talking like literally someone just sits down with like an AI and just talks to it for a podcast. I think that'd actually be super fucking interesting. Like, super interesting. Someone who's listening, make it happen. I don't have the intelligence to make that happen. Someone make that happen. Next question I have here from Tanner is, are we alone in the universe? No. And you have to be pretty ignorant to say otherwise, I think, anyway. I think life is a lot more interesting if you keep an open mind. I think that we have seen enough things and there's been enough actual evidence of stuff that you can't think that there's nothing else out there. Do I think they're little green men? No. Do I think there's a much higher intelligent life form out there that visits our planet once in a while and looks at us like a primitive life form? Absolutely, I do. I think that, again, you have to be pretty ignorant not to think that from any standpoint. I really do. I believe there's other life out there for sure. I believe there's probably life out there that's very close to us. Maybe it's in another galaxy or something. I don't know. But I think that one day we will discover that not only is there life on other planets and in other galaxies, but it's not that fucking different from us in its core. You know? I think that's what's interesting. Do I think there's going to be like an alien war or anything? No. Although it might solve a lot of problems if we get attacked by aliens, because it would cause everybody who's fighting and all the bullshit going on in the world, it would then cause everybody to just shut the fuck up and focus on something else. So in one way, it would bring the world together probably. You'd probably still have some fucking idiots that'd be like, no, we are strong. Like North Korea would be like, oh, we're going to nuke these fucking aliens. But they'd be wiped out, so it's fine. Not that I want the people of North Korea to be wiped out, because they're, innocent enough and in all that. But anyway, gonna just go ahead and move on from that line of thought. Where do you believe you're going to end up when you die? Fuck. Well, I am going to be cremated, so wherever that I wind up there. I don't know. And that's the question, isn't it? That's the scary part. Is no matter what, there is no definitive proof, undeniable proof that we know exactly what happens when we die. Depending on who you ask, I keep an open mind. Do we just rot in the ground and our brain releases all these chemicals that, simulate all this good stuff and euphoria and things of that nature? And that's what we think heaven is? I don't know. I've heard that explanation before. Do I believe in souls and so forth, and I do believe in God in some shape or form. I'm not a huge fan of organized religion, but that's another story for another time. Doesn't mean I'm against people doing it or anything like that. It's just not for me. So that's a tricky question, man. That's it. I've never even remotely discussed this on the podcast before, but something happens. I don't believe we just go rot in the ground and that's it, and you just see black and that's it. I can't believe that. Like, that's just like, I don't know. I like I said, I believe in souls and so forth, and I think if you're a good person, you should probably be rewarded in some way. And if you're an absolute fucking piece of shit, well, you should be punished. That's what I think. Whatever that winds up to be, So hopefully that answers that question. I don't know. That's some tricky, like, philosophical type shit. But I appreciate all those questions, kind of breaking it up with some more serious discussion here on the Hodder Show. And now we move on to a couple of questions from my boy Dylan, who I've had these questions kicking around. So I really wanted to answer these questions. What has been your favorite podcast this year? So when you asked me this question, I kind of sort of told you it was SCP Archives. Excuse me. That's still accurate. I love SCP Archives. However, this year, I also discovered Creepy, which is a horror story podcast. And I'm a huge fan of John Grills. I've been a huge fan of John Grills because he also does most of the narration for SCP Archives. But his voice is completely different for SCP than it is for Creepy. Creepy is just like his normal speaking voice. He'll beef it up a bit, but I've listened to literally like every episode of Creepy, and it's been around for like 7 years and, or 6 years, somewhere in that ballpark. And, there's some stories I'm just not a fan of the particular story, so I might skip it. But like, I've listened to every episode of that fucking podcast, and I cannot get enough of it. I'm starting to now slowly get to the end, so I'll be all caught up, which is kind of sad because I've been binging that show. Like almost every day I listen to at least like 2 or 3 episodes. The days that I'm working, I at least get through 3 or 4 episodes, and I just love it. So Creepy SCP Archives, goes without saying, the Grey Rooms, great season finale. Unfortunately, the Grey Rooms is no longer a thing, so that's why I didn't mention it. I've been loving what Baseline Feed's been doing. Shoutouts to my homies, and I'm not just saying that because they're my homies. I think they really genuinely are doing something awesome. Yeah, those are probably my main 2. Creepy and SCP Archives. As far as not narration audio drama podcasts, something to wrestle with, Bruce Pritchard, my number one. The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy definitely has been a big one for me this year too. I've really enjoyed that podcast. John Alba is a gift to the world. Yeah. So hopefully that answers that question, Dylan. And then he also, I think he was kind of joking with this, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Where the hell has this love of horror come from? I thought you always hated that shit. Him and I had this conversation before where I told him how much I hated horror stuff. Like I wasn't a fan of horror movies or anything like that. But here's what happened, Dylan, is I slowly being with Sam's a huge Halloween horror fan and stuff like that. So I slowly started kind of half-assed getting into horror movies and stuff like that. And like, I always really enjoyed horror narration. I've always kind of dabbled in that with this podcast for Halloween and Christmas and stuff like that. So I always had an interest in it, but it was like a closeted kind of faraway interest. And then I discovered the world of SCP, which was definitely more up my alley than your traditional. I knew what creepypastas were, but SCP, I really dug my teeth into that world and that universe. So then I discovered SCP Archives. And I realized, oh, there's like audio dramas of horror. I didn't know that was a thing. So SCP Archives really made me a fan of horror audio dramas. And then from there, SCP Archives introduced me to the talents of Graham Rowett, who then introduced me to the Grey Rooms and the Hotel, among other projects he's been involved with. And then from there, it trails out. I mean, I discovered Creepy through John Grills. So SCP Archives, it all comes back to SCP Archives, really. But Creepy has made me definitely more of a fan of horror, too. This last year, I've really, like this Halloween, we watched a lot of horror movies and stuff that normally would have freaked me out so much I couldn't sleep. Just didn't really do it. It freaked, don't get me wrong, it freaked me out, but like, it didn't like, it was in a good way. And obviously, writing horror has made me more of a fan of horror, which is interesting. So I guess you could say it's kind of a combination of things, but Horror audio dramas definitely are the biggest thing responsible for my really getting into horror. That's really what's the most important thing, is these horror audio dramas that I am so into. Like, again, SCP Archives, Creepy, The Grey Rooms, The Hotel. There's tons of them I'm forgetting, but those are my main 4 that I recommend. I still do recommend The Grey Rooms as long as the feed is up to go listen to, because it is, it's my favorite podcast. What else can I say? Absolutely loved The Grey Rooms. Hope to see you come back one day. The next question I have here is from Mr. Garrett Coles. And he would like to know, what is your favorite era of Metallica? Man, that is an interesting question, because there are so many eras of Metallica. For me, my favorite Metallica album is Load. So I'm a big fan of the 90s era of Metallica. And it's not a popular thing to say. Obviously, the Black Album, fantastic. Master of Puppets, all that stuff, it's all fucking killer. But what got me into Metallica, because I never was that big of a fan of Metallica, but what got me into Metallica was I was in Cape Breton. I'll never forget this as long as I live. I was at my grandparents' place, and I was watching MTV, and this video came on, and it was like in like this frozen wasteland, and there was these fucking badass looking guys playing music, and there was this cool fucking guitar lick and stuff, and bass riff and stuff like that, and it was this really epic fucking music video, and I loved the music because it was heavy, but it was like, I was really into like Godsmack and stuff like that at the time, so I really resonated with that song. And then I would never forget, I'm just fucking loving it. And all of a sudden, a thing pops up, and it's Metallica, King Nothing. And I went, huh? This is Metallica? I thought Metallica were like, the only Metallica I'd heard at that point was like stuff off Kill 'Em All. And I just wasn't as much of a fan of that at the time. So I was like, this is fucking Metallica? Like, what the hell? So, yeah. Load, Reload. I love that era. Also, though, I do actually really like Saint Anger. So, fight me on that. But, so I guess you could say Garrett, the 90s era, Load, Reload era is, without a doubt, my favorite era of Metallica. And the last batch of questions I have here is from my boy Tim Coleman from Septum Bone. Unga bunga, brother. He would like to know, who is your favorite guest ever, and why is it me? Obviously, it's you, Unga bunga. That's a hard question, bro, because like, I wouldn't say there's like one specific guest that really super stands out. There's a few that, just because of how much they mean to me in my life and the fact that they've been in my podcast, I have to mention. Obviously, having Sam on, yeah, it's just fucking awesome. I always loved having Brandon on because it's fucking Brandon. Garrett, Woody, having Jason on was super important because just of how much he's meant to this podcast over the last few years and how much he's done for me. Having my mother on obviously was super, super important to me as well. And I'd love to do that again sometime. My Hodder's Getting Hitched episode is really important to me because I had, you know, my father-in-law makes an appearance on that. My dad actually, you can hear him a couple of times making some comments and stuff, and he's not someone who would ever get in front of a microphone or anything. So like, it's just, yeah, it's, that was really important to me as well. Pretty much anyone who was involved with the 5th year anniversary special, you know, that's a really important episode for me. So, and really at this point, as much as I love having people on I already know is going to be a great time, I really enjoy now when I have people on who I don't know and we just fucking hit it off and have a blast. Like yourself, Tim, obviously goes without saying. And it's just like it's not like almost like it's a surprise because it always happens, but it's just like you form that genuine connection. And when I say to people now, like, hey, you're my people now. It doesn't happen with everybody, and that's okay. But there are times when it's just like, okay, you're welcome on my show anytime. Anything I can do to help, you're my peeps. You are officially in the Hodder Show family. You know what I mean? Like that's what really makes me happy now. But then also, it's kind of a challenge when you sit down with someone and you spend the first, hopefully you can spend 15, 20 minutes talking before the episode so you can kind of get those cobwebs out of the way. That's always my hope. If not, you spend the first half of the podcast kind of sort of feeling each other out and stuff. And then the last half, you're just fucking firing on all cylinders. And that's cool. That's a lot of the reasons why my podcast goes so long, because I usually find at that hour mark, if it's someone I don't know, we're like totally in sync by that point usually. So I'm like, okay. And that's, it's fun to do that. And that's what I really love now when I can be in that kind of situation. But then also sometimes I just want to sit down with my boys and just have a chat. And it's not something I do a lot anymore, but I would like to change that going forward. Have you ever had American barbecue? I have had American style barbecue, Texas style barbecue and things of that nature, Southern style barbecue, but I've never actually had like American barbecue, but I would really like to change that. Yeah. He would like to know my favorite wrestler and why. So I have two. Dean Malenko's got to be my number one because I'm a big fan of the technical aspect of wrestling. He was just the man of 1,000 holds, the Iceman. He's a fucking bad motherfucker in that ring, man. He was so underrated. One of the greatest technical wrestlers and cruiserweights of all fucking time in an era where everybody started doing the flippy eye-risk maneuvers and stuff like that. He stayed on the ground and just would fucking stretch in, just outmaneuver you. And he was, I just love watching him work. It's just, yeah. But then also, like, I think he had a great personality too. And if he could have just maybe let go of that serious wrestler attitude sometimes, I think he could have been a much bigger star than he was. But that being said, he still did great, especially in ECW. He did fucking fantastic as the shooter, Dean Malenko, like, fuck, man, he did great there. Then also I got to give a shout out to Matt Hardy too, for a lot of different reasons. Mostly, he's Matt fucking Hardy. Charismatically speaking, promo wise, all that stuff. I love Matt Hardy. I love all aspects of Matt Hardy. I think Matt Hardy version 1 was such an underrated fucking character, and he should have been at least in the mid-card title picture, Intercontinental in the United States at that point. He deserved to be in that spot. At that point, was he a world champion? I don't think so. But then when he came back after the whole Lita and Edge thing, in my opinion, Matt Hardy should have been world champion in that. Like, that feud should have been a world champion feud. So those are my guys for sure. My favorite concert story. So there's three actually. So my first concert technically I ever went to was a Simple Plan concert. Please don't ask. Simple Plan were great, actually. But we were standing in line And this person walked up to us and were like, "Hey, do you have a Bell phone?" And I did at the time. And I was like, "Yes, I do." It was like, "You want to meet the band?" And the people I was with were freaking out. And I was kind of like, "Yeah, sure. What the hell?" So we're chilling in this dressing room thing. And then Simple Plan walks in. And everyone is losing their fucking shit. And like, obviously it was really fucking cool. They're fucking Simple Plan. I mean, but at the time I was very into my Alice in Chains and like Godsmacks and stuff like that. So I was very not standoffish, but like I enjoyed them, but I wasn't like freaking out. And the one guitar player was super fucking cool. He was kind of like looking at me side-eyed, and he was like, "You're here with someone, right?" I'm like, "Technically, yes." He was like, "Okay." And then like I asked him a question about something to do with guitar, like in one of their songs, and he was like, "Are you a player?" And I said, "Yeah, like, I a little bit." And just, yeah, we ended up having like a 5-minute conversation about the guitar tone for the solo when they're that Untitled, that epic fucking guitar solo. Because I've always wanted to ask that. Like, yo, what fucking gear did you guys use for that? Because it sounds fucking badass. Like, and yeah, that was cool. Brandon and I got to go see Alice in Chains, which was fucking awesome. So it was Mastodon, Deftones, Alice in Chains, the Black Diamond Sky Tour. I'm not a huge Deftones fan, but it was still really cool. But just getting to experience that with Brandon was fucking awesome. And then, probably one of my favorite concert stories, Sam got me tickets to go see Uproar Fest, which I couldn't tell you the other bands on the bill. Actually, yes, I can. Sorry, I remember now. It was Coheed and Cambria, who were the openers, who I have tried really, really hard to get into Coheed, and I just can't. I've tried so hard because Garrett absolutely loves them, and I want to love them too. I don't hate them. I don't know why. I can't fucking do it. And I was so disappointed with their fucking live show. I think it's because they made it was so short, they had to kind of condense shit. But like, I remember being so excited to see them play live. And it was like, I think they played like 8 songs, and all of them sounded the exact fucking same except for the last song, which was Welcome Home, of course. And I was like, oh, like, what the fuck was that? I remember thinking when they were done, like, what the fuck was that? They played like one like good song. And then Jane's Addiction played afterwards, which was interesting. Never been a huge Jane's Addiction fan, but they were decent. And then the lights go down. And Sam gets a picture of me literally crying when Alice in Chains started playing. Because when I saw them with Brandon, they were really like, that was the Black Gives Way to Blue era. And I love that fucking record. That's my second favorite Alice in Chains record. But it was still kind of new and fresh, them getting back together with William Duvall. And whereas in this era, this was the Devil Put Dinosaurs Here era, which I love that record too. So they opened up with, what did they open up with? What fucking song did they open up with? I want to say they opened up with like Rain When I Die or something. It was something crazy. And I couldn't believe they were opening with that song. And I was overcome with emotion. I was so fucking excited. And Sam snapped a picture of me, like literally with tears in my eyes, like my hand on my head, like, holy fuck. Like, yeah, so that was fun. And then also her singing along to a couple Alice in Chains songs. That was just, that was really special. That was really special. Other than Pabst, what other beer would you award the blue ribbon to? Moosehead. Straight up. Moosehead blue ribbon. Has a nice ring to it. And the last question we have here today is also from Tim. What life lessons can you teach me? Oh, fuck. It is a whole hell of a lot easier to be nice to people and to be pleasant to people than it is to be just fucking miserable to people and be rude to people. It takes more effort to muster up the energy to bitch and complain about stuff and be fucking negative all the time than it does to just either not say anything in certain situations or just try to look at the good things. You know, I think it's so important, especially the way the fucking world's going. Like, just be fucking nice to people, man. Just be fucking nice to people. That's the fucking lesson. Just, if you're fucking walking down the street and someone accidentally fucking bumps into you and they're like, oh, sorry, man. Like, don't be like, yo, fuck you, man. Watch where you're fucking. Like, just be like, oh, it's all good, man. You have a good day. Like, just be fucking nice to people. Hold the door open for somebody. If you're standing with someone waiting for a fucking bus and you're kind of just standing there awkwardly, just be like, oh, yeah, how you doing? Like, you know, I don't know. We have the power to affect countless people with our kindness. You know what I mean? If you're, I always use this as an example, but if you're going through the fucking drive-thru and you know, say to the person like, hey, how you doing? Like, oh yeah, cool. And you're super nice to them. You don't have to go above and beyond and be like, oh my God, how thank you. So just, hey, how you doing today? Oh, right on. Like, oh, thank you so very much. You have a great day. Leave a little tip maybe. You know, just be nice. Be courteous. And you have no idea. Maybe that person was having a shit fucking morning. And you coming through and being super just courteous and nice when you don't really have to be per se because they don't expect it. They could be like, man, that person was really nice. Maybe it helps to put them in a bit of a better mood. And then they're a little more courteous and nice to the next person. Maybe that person's having a shit fucking day. And they're like, oh, that person was so nice. And maybe it brings them out of that funk a little bit. And then they go to work and they spread that. And then before you know it, you could affect 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 people just from being nice to somebody because then they reciprocate that. At least that's what you hope. So just be fucking nice to people, man. That's it. Just be nice. Relax. Stop worrying about stupid shit. We need to fucking just, everyone needs to chill the fuck out. Okay? Eat a cheeseburger. Crack a nice ice cold Pabst Blue Ribbon. And just fucking relax. People get so fucking worked up about shit nowadays. It just, I don't know. Everything is a fight. Everything is hate. It's just like, holy fuck. Can we all just relax? Eat a fucking cheeseburger. Have a beer. Let's all just sit down and figure this shit out. Okay? I think the world would be a much better place if everybody would just sit down, eat a cheeseburger, or a chicken burger, or an Impossible beef burger, whatever the fuck. Have a beer. Take a couple deep breaths. And then we move on. What's really important? What are we fucking bitching about? What's really at our core here? Like some of these people I see who are just fucking screaming about stuff all the time. It's their whole personality. I look at them and I'm just like, what's really going on here? What are you really upset about? And a lot of the times you get to the core of that person and they're just miserable people. They have a shitty fucking life and they're miserable. Well, you know, what can we do to help that, man? What are you so upset about? Sit down, have a cheeseburger, have a beer. Let's talk this out. Point of this is Just be fucking nice to people. Okay? It's not hard. It's actually easier, I think. And it also, it gives you a little boost. You know? When you're nice to somebody, when you don't have to be, I always feel good about it. It's selfish for me at this point. I'm like, fuck yeah, man. I get a little boost out of that. So, be nice to people, motherfuckers. Hope that answers that question, Tim. Hello, everybody. This is TJ coming back here to finish a set of questions that I missed for this wonderful Q&A here coming at you from my car on a different thing. So if that's why I sound hella weird, that is why. But I realized just now that I actually missed a set of questions from one of my patrons, and I wanted to make it right because he is a dear friend of mine, and I didn't want to let him down. So, I have 4 more questions here before we sign off with my buddy, Mr. Arthur Unk. First off, Arthur would like to know, the purge happens in your town. Who's your first target? That is an interesting question. I don't really have any enemies or people I hate. As far as purge, I guess it's all crime is legal, right? That's the purge. So I guess I'd rob a bank. Just money. Just give me some money. You know? Or maybe I'd just give me some money. Or I'd go, oh, no. You know what I would do? I would go and rob Burger King and get 100 burgers. I'll be like, put it in the bag, dog. Let's go. That's what I'd fucking do. I'd go rob Burger King. But I wouldn't there's no one I hate. I'm in this interesting part of my life where I don't hate anybody. You know what I mean? It's nice. It's a nice place to be. So there's no one I'd want to target. What food did you want to like but turned out to be trashed? Avocado. Anything avocado based. I fucking hate avocados. I hate the texture. I hate the taste. I have tried so hard to like avocados and I just can not do it. No matter what. I've tried. Also hummus. Well, hummus. We recently have started trying to incorporate more protein into our diet and less red meat. So it's chickpeas are a great thing for that. And I don't mind chickpeas themselves, but it was hummus is great because it's a snack and it's not god awful for you and it's got a lot of protein. So I was like, fuck yeah, get some hummus. And yeah, I don't like hummus at all. I've tried really hard. However, there is this dill pickle hummus that I am very much a fan of. So there's that. However, on a funny note, if you asked me this a month and a half ago, I would have also said peppers, but I like peppers now. So figure that out. But I fucking hate onions and fucking tomatoes. If I go through the Burger King drive-thru and I ask for no tomatoes or onions on my fucking Whopper and they give me tomato onions, I will fucking purge that place and everyone in it. So to circle back to your first question, Arthur, yeah, I'd still purge Burger King in that situation. Next question he has is, tell us how you survived the worst day of your life. I've been pretty blessed, man, honestly. Nothing really super stands out. I guess you could say my grandfather's funeral was a pretty shitty fucking day. That sucked. But I really, I was kind of going out of my way to hold my emotions back and was there for my family a lot. And then I let myself kind of grieve on my own timeline. So I guess you could say I kind of just breathed and got through it. Anytime I have a bad day or a shitty day, that's what I try to do. Sometimes I just get fucking... I guess recently the shittiest day I had was when I found out that I was going to be losing my job that I loved through no fault of my own and there was nothing I could do. And that I was then going to not have a job. I ended up getting a part-time job, which has been great, thank God. But like, that was a pretty shitty day, and I always let myself be upset. I let myself be angry and upset. And then I just kind of breathe and just get through it. That's kind of how I deal with things, if that makes sense. And the last question I have from Arthur here, which is one I was really excited to answer. Describe your creative writing process as if I critiqued the answer. So this is interesting because Arthur is a brilliant fucking writer, and I am not. I am a amateur writer who writes for fucking Reddit and no sleep. So, it's pretty different levels of, of fucking talent. I mean, I guess, one of my stories is going to be narrated by Mr. Creepypasta, so I guess that's a little feather in my old caparino. I guess we'll take that. However, what I like to do is I always start off either with a concept and I write it out in a blurb, or I will think of a line. I kind of write stories like I would write a song, if that makes sense. I'll start off with a line, or I'll start off with a lyric. I tend to work backwards a lot. I'll come up with the line that will then be the ending of a story. For example, the most recent story I posted on No Sleep, and the one that's actually gotten quite a bit of traction, which is pretty feckin' cool. I'll just pull it up here. It is called Drag Me Under. And it is the story of basically a captain at sea. Some shit goes down. I'm not going to ruin the whole fucking story because it's but the last line of that story, I had the name Drag Me Under, and I knew I was going to have it was going to be about something at sea. And I was like, Drag Me Under. Okay, cool. That's a cool title. I thought anyway. It was going to be about sea. And literally the last thing that the person says is drag me under. I will let the blank blank drag me under. Because I'm not going to say what it is because it ruins the whole fucking story. You should go read it. It's gotten a lot of traction. So that's what I like to do. And what I do is I don't like to worry too much about grammar and things of that nature when I'm doing my first draft. I will read through it and I will really just get all my ideas out. I'm a huge overthinker, right? As Arthur, as you know. So I like to just get my shit out. Get whatever idea I have. Let me get it out on paper, so to speak. And then I go back through, I run it through Grammarly or a spell check or whatever at least, and I'll edit stuff like that doesn't make sense. Then I'll let it sit for a couple of days, and I'll think about the idea. I did that recently with a story I wrote about a ghost caroler, and I thought it was a really interesting story. It was a short and sweet one. And then basically after letting it sit for a couple of days, I realized that, it's not up to snuff. It's not very good. And I ended up writing something completely different that I think is super interesting. So that's how that goes sometimes. Sometimes I'll just get a random fucking burst of an idea and I have to just sit and finish it. I wish I was someone who could, I write short stories, right? I don't write, the maximum a story will be for me is maybe a few thousand words, 3,000 to 4,000 words, 5,000 words, maybe tops. But they're at least over 1,000 words. So I'm not really someone who is good at starting to actually write a story and then come back. I'm someone who I have to get the full thing out in one sitting. I wish that wasn't the case. And sometimes I've been able to come back to it. But my best stories, at least from what people tell me, are the ones I've written in one sitting. The ones that I jotted down an idea when I had it, and I came back to it and fully wrote it in one sitting. Or I just got a fucking idea, had the time, sat down, and just fucking let it all out of me. My most recent story I wrote, that's what I did. I had an idea about something that I thought was really interesting, and it kind of like was a little strange. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just fucking sit here, and instead of having some downtime to like game or whatever, I was like, I'm just going to fucking sit here and finish this story. And that's what I did. And I, got I think it's about a 2,000 word story in a couple hours, which is pretty good for me. And I haven't gone back through and done so the other part of what I do to make sure the story makes sense, because one of my biggest things when I first started writing was, and this is actually a critique, Arthur, that you actually gave me that was really helpful. You were like, I write how I speak, and that's what holds me back a lot as a writer. But I think it lends itself well to narration. Personally, I think that. And I guess you could say that's what I go for when I write, because I know my stuff lends itself really well to narration. That's why narrators love doing my shit. And they always say like, oh my God, your story was so easy to narrate. Like I didn't have to change anything. I didn't have to reword stuff. There was one particular narrator who like basically rewrote my fucking story and kind of ruined it, but that's neither here nor there. We're not going to talk about that right now. That's a story for another time. But like, what I like to do is I'll read through it, but then I'll run it through my text-to-speech app that's quite good that I have. And I'll listen to it while I'm at work, just walking around like I would a podcast. And I'll make notes while I'm listening to it. Okay, that sentence is a little strange, because if the text-to-speech editor has a hard time kind of like getting through a sentence, I know, okay, that's an awkward sentence. I need to go back through and, excuse me, and edit it. So that's what I like to do with it. And then once that is done, I'll do my edits, let it sit for maybe another day or two, really, really think, okay, am I proud of this? Am I happy with this? My number one thing with my writing is, did I get out the story that I wanted to get out? I'm not fucking worried about being the next best writer in the fucking world or anything like that. I do this for fun. I do it to get ideas I have out, and maybe along the way, if people can have some enjoyment from it, then that's awesome. And that's what I'm looking for. So at the end of when I'm done and I'm ready to post a story, I always say to myself, am I really happy? Am I happy with this? Did I get out the idea I wanted to get out? Because to me, art is subjective, but also you can critique as far as this sentence doesn't make sense. Maybe this wording is a little strange. Grammar's improper here. But as far as the concept, you're dealing with people's art, right? If something doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. But like, if I say have a story about, like one of my more kind of awkward stories, but people seem to enjoy it for whatever reason. I think it was a bit of a miss, but it was a story about a dude who was an overnight snow shoveler, and he's like saw something that he couldn't explain. And it was this random little throwaway story I did last year. And a few people like really, really enjoyed it. And they were like, this is so different, because it was based on true events. Because in my town, there are people who literally work all night shoveling the trail paths in town here. And I was talking with one of them the one day, and I said, have you ever seen anything like fucking weird? And they're like, oh dude, all the time. Like I see shit I can't explain almost every night. And I'm like, that's fucking wild, right? So maybe that's why, I don't know. But I was like, it's a concept that if I can get my idea out, I get out the story I want to tell, that's what I'm really going for. I'm not worried about, if I was writing a novel or whatever, or a novella or something, I'd be a lot more worried about my grammar and things of that nature. But like, I'm just like, you know what? For what I'm doing, as long as I get the story out there, I think that works, man. I really do. So hopefully that answers that question. Yeah, because I love talking writing with you, Arthur. And thank you very much for your questions and for being a patron. I apologize that I technically missed your questions on my my little thing because I forgot to update it. But we got this, so that's something. Thank you so much to everybody for their questions for this edition of Ask Hodder Anything. I always have a lot of fun doing these, and I hope you did as well. Before we go, I, of course, need to take a second to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters, my Hodheads. We, of course, have the OG Hodhead, Scott Duquette. We have Ronan Komori, also known as Mo. We have Wolf Delta Pi, also known as Tanner Wood of Baseline Feed. Ronan also is of Baseline Feed as well. Eric Phones, actor extraordinaire. Arthur Unk. Mike Quintero of Mike's Mystery Mansion. C.M. Peters of Baseline Feed. Jason Reese of Jaber Digital Arts. Kelly Sisson. Terry and Janet Hodder. Interesting. Brandon Bowden of Bowden Voice. And Neil Skarupa. I appreciate all of your guys' support so much. And also thank you to my Patreon supporters who did submit questions. If you're listening to this and you want to submit a question to Ask Hodder Anything, if you think you got something that I could really go off on for a little while, hit me up, let me know, and I'll put it in the bank for the next edition of Ask Hodder Anything. I do these kind of just once in a while whenever I got some questions, or if I am just in the mood to do it, and I was in the mood to do one and I had some questions kicking around, so I wanted to do it, and I always have a lot of fun. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, let me know what you thought of this episode, and also, if there's a question that someone asked that you have an answer for, let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. You can also follow The Hodder Show on social media. We have Instagram and Facebook, as well as a Discord. Come hang out in the Hodder Show Discord. I do some live stuff once in a blue moon. I jump on there and we get to have some fun. I got a great community over there. If you would like to support The Hodder Show on Patreon, you can do so by going to patreon.com/The Hodder Show. Aside from giving a shout out like I did earlier to all my Patreon supporters, if you join the $5 or above tier, you will also get access to the Tapes of Trepidation, which is a horror narration podcast. Episode 10 is coming very soon, so that's 10 episodes you're going to have to jump into, and much more on the way. Christmas is coming, and I always have some spooky Christmassy type shit for The Hodder Show, so rest assured, I got something cooking. Thank you so very much for listening, especially if you're still listening. You're seriously the best. I appreciate you so much. Maybe you'll take that extra step to leave a rating for The Hodder Show, hit that subscribe button, all that fun stuff. I appreciate it so much, and I will catch you next time on The Hodder Show. Take it easy, guys.